We live in a world that breaks people, but not in obvious ways. It does not destroy them instantly. It erodes them slowly, through repetition, through pressure, through constant exposure to things they were never trained to handle. Most people are not defeated by one major event. They are defeated by 1,000 small reactions that accumulate over time. A delayed message creates irritation. A bad comment creates insecurity. A small failure creates doubt. And instead of processing these moments consciously, they react automatically. That is how control is lost. Not in one moment, but in a pattern. This is the real problem of modern life. People have built comfort around themselves, but they have never built stability within themselves. They have access to everything, yet they cannot handle anything that challenges their expectations. They are not prepared for reality. They are dependent on it being convenient. The Stoics understood something that most people still refuse to accept. You do not suffer because of what happens to you. You suffer because of how you interpret what happens to you. That difference is everything. Most people believe that events create emotions, but in reality, interpretation creates emotion. Two people can go through the same situation and experience it completely differently. One breaks, the other remains calm. The situation is the same, but the internal response is different. This means the problem is not outside of you, it is inside of you. And if the problem is inside of you, it can be changed. But that requires something most people avoid: responsibility. The first step to becoming mentally undefeated is understanding control. Not controlling the world, but understanding the limits of control. There are things you control and things you do not. Your thoughts, your actions, your decisions belong to you. Everything else does not. Other people's behavior, outcomes, opinions, timing, circumstances are outside of your control. Most people ignore this distinction. They spend their energy trying to control other people, trying to control outcomes, trying to control how things unfold. And when they fail, which they always will, they feel frustration, anger, and helplessness. This is not because life is unfair. It is because they are focusing on the wrong things. When you focus on what you cannot control, you create anxiety. When you focus on what you can control, you create power. That is the shift. The Stoic does not try to change the world to fit his expectations. He changes his response to fit reality. He stops wasting energy on things that are unstable and invests it in things that are stable. His behavior, his mindset, his discipline. And because of that, he becomes consistent. Not because life is consistent, but because he is. But understanding control is not enough, because the mind itself is undisciplined. It reacts automatically. It creates meaning instantly. It exaggerates situations. It turns small problems into large ones. A delay becomes a problem. A mistake becomes failure. A comment becomes an insult. The mind does not see reality as it is. It sees reality as it interprets it. And most people never question that interpretation. They assume it is correct. They assume their reaction is justified. But that is where the problem begins. The Stoics trained themselves to separate events from interpretation. They asked a simple question: what actually happened, without the story? Not what it feels like, not what it seems like, but what actually happened. This removes distortion. This removes exaggeration. This removes emotional weight. When you do this, you realize that most of what you react to is not reality. It is your version of reality. And once you see that, you gain control, because now you can change the version. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. He stripped things down to their simplest form. He removed the emotional narrative and looked only at the objective reality. This is just an event. This is just a situation. This is just a moment. When you remove the story, you remove the emotional intensity. When you remove the emotional intensity, you create space. And in that space, you choose your response. But there is another layer to this. Even if your mind becomes more disciplined, your body still seeks comfort. And this creates another weakness. Most people structure their life around avoiding discomfort. They want things to be easy, smooth, predictable. They avoid anything that feels difficult. And over time, this makes them fragile. Because the more you depend on comfort, the less capable you become of handling discomfort. And discomfort is inevitable.
The Stoics approached this differently. They trained for discomfort. They exposed themselves to it intentionally. Cold, hunger, simplicity in convenience. Not to suffer, but to adapt. Because when you experience discomfort voluntarily, you remove the fear of it, and fear is what amplifies everything. Fear is what turns a small problem into a big one. Fear is what makes people avoid situations they could handle. Fear is what creates hesitation, doubt, and overthinking. When you face discomfort repeatedly, you realize something important. You can handle more than you think. That realization builds confidence. Not confidence based on outcomes, but confidence based on capability. You trust your ability to respond, and when you trust your response, you stop fearing situations. You stop avoiding difficulty. You start moving forward. At the highest level, Stoicism is about acceptance. Not passive acceptance, but intelligent acceptance. Most people resist reality. They want things to be different. They argue with what is happening. They complain about circumstances. But reality does not respond to resistance. It does not adjust to your preferences. It unfolds independently. And when you fight it, you lose energy. You create frustration. You create suffering. The Stoic does not fight reality. He aligns with it. He accepts what is happening and focuses on what he can do within it. This does not mean he does nothing. It means he does not waste energy on what he cannot change. He directs his effort where it matters, his actions, his mindset, his response. And because of that, he becomes effective. Acceptance creates clarity. When you accept reality, you see it clearly. When you see it clearly, you respond effectively. When you respond effectively, you create progress. This is how growth happens. Not by controlling everything, but by responding correctly to what happens. This is what it means to become mentally undefeated. It does not mean nothing affects you. It means nothing controls you. You still experience difficulty, but you do not collapse under it. You still face uncertainty, but you do not fear it. You still encounter problems, but you do not exaggerate them. You become stable, not because life is stable, but because you are. You become consistent, not because circumstances are predictable, but because your response is. You become resilient, not because challenges disappear, but because you handle them. Most people are inconsistent. Their mood changes based on events. Their behavior changes based on outcomes. Their mindset changes based on feedback. They are reactive. The Stoic is different. He is consistent. His behavior is guided by principles, not emotions. His mindset is grounded, not reactive. His actions are intentional, not impulsive. This consistency creates strength. It allows him to move forward without being constantly disrupted. It allows him to focus on what matters. It allows him to maintain direction even when things are difficult. And over time, this creates something powerful: freedom. Not freedom from difficulty, but freedom from being controlled by it. You are no longer dependent on circumstances to feel stable. You are no longer affected by every small change. You are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing, and that is the difference. Most people wait for life to become easier. They wait for better conditions, better timing, better situations. But that moment never comes. Life does not become easier, it becomes different. And if you are not prepared, every change feels like a problem. The Stoic does not wait. He prepares. He builds his mindset daily. He trains his response. He strengthens his ability to handle uncertainty. He becomes less dependent on external validation. He becomes less reactive to external events.
And because of that, he becomes stable. That stability allows him to act, not react. It allows him to move forward without hesitation. It allows him to handle pressure without collapsing. It allows him to maintain focus without distraction. This is what makes someone dangerous in the best possible way. Not physical strength, not external success, but internal control. The ability to remain calm under pressure. The ability to think clearly in difficult situations. The ability to act when others hesitate. Because most people hesitate. They overthink. They doubt. They fear. They wait. And while they do that, opportunities pass. Situations change. Time moves. The Stoic does not hesitate. He acts, not impulsively, but decisively, because he trusts his ability to respond. That trust is built through discipline, through repetition, through training.
Not just physical training, but mental training. Training your thoughts, training your reactions, training your perception. Every day is practice. Every situation is feedback. Every challenge is an opportunity to improve. And this is where most people fail. They treat life as something that happens to them, not something they train for. They react instead of prepare. They complain instead of adjust. They avoid instead of confront. The Stoic does the opposite. He prepares instead of reacting. He adjusts instead of complaining. He confronts instead of avoiding. And because of that, he becomes stronger. Not because life becomes easier, but because he becomes capable. That is the goal. Not comfort, not ease, capability. Because when you are capable, you do not need perfect conditions. You do not need everything to go your way. You do not need certainty. You move forward anyway. And that is what makes you undefeated. Not because nothing challenges you, but because nothing stops you. Not because life is predictable, but because you are prepared. Not because you control everything, but because you control yourself. And once you reach that level, everything changes. You stop being controlled. You stop being reactive. You stop being dependent. And you start becoming stable, focused, and resilient. That is real power. And it has nothing to do with the outside world. It has everything to do with what is happening inside you.